Tim Marshall, and welcome to the R&B Showcase radio show. We got a great show for you here today. As a matter of fact, we have a special guest joining us in the studio. He's the son of a legend of the incomparable Jake Weiman, who worked with the Highland Party Machine many years ago. We have his son in the studio, and he's also a great DJ. He's been on the scene for quite some time. He's going to be sharing some history and some music with us today. We're going to welcome to the R&B Showcase, Jammin, Jeff Weiman. What's up, brother?
Thank you very much, my friend. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good to have you here as part of the show. And tell us about this music, keeping the Motown sound alive. Why is it important?
Well, it's definitely a part of Americana now. The music is forever. It doesn't have a time stamp on it. It doesn't have a date. It's still fresh like it was back in the day. And it's, teaching these young kids about what real music is all about and how it was done back in the day.
This is the music that influenced a whole generation of folks out there, not just the young people, just the recording artists in general, the industry in general.
That's right.
So,
that's right.
Hey, if you're doing what you're doing your job, and that's keeping the sound of music alive, Jeff. And I appreciate you being part of the show here today. And I'm looking forward to talking more about the music and just keeping that Motown, that R&B, and that soul music out there. Tell folks where they can listen to your television show and your radio show.
Well, you can hear me every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday nights on famous56bossradio.com, listenuplive.com, and mixlr.com/WJRG, and Saturday nights live from Michael's Restaurant and Lounge in Morrisville, Pennsylvania.
All right, Jeff is keeping that sound and soul alive as we do on the R&B Showcase radio and television show. Again, Jammin, Jeff Weiman, thanks for stopping down today. And
thank you so much.
We're coming to you from the heart and soul of Philadelphia. Tim Marshall, Jammin, Jeff Weiman on the R&B Showcase radio and television network. Hi, this is Tim Marshall, and welcome to R&B Showcase Live. We're into our second season of the program.
Hey, this is Lil Saunders, formerly singer of Hell Beverly Hills. You're watching Tim Marshall on the R&B Showcase Live.
Tim Marshall for R&B Showcase Live. A very special guest in the studio is Jammin, Jeff Weiman, a great DJ from the Philadelphia area. And speaking of Philadelphia radio, we were influenced by a lot of the great DJs like Georgie Woods, the guy with the goods, our own Larry Cotton, Butterball, Jocko Henderson, Doug Henderson Jr., Mimi Brown, Tony Brown, Jerry Wilson. The list goes on and on. Joe Tuku Kalari, the Gita with the Eater, Jerry Blavitt, and High Lit. So many greats. My cousin Bobby J, Fabulous Freddie C. So many great people from this Philadelphia and South Jersey area to keep and extend this legacy. People like Bob Pantana who continue to do it. Let's talk a little bit about Philadelphia radio.
Yeah, my dad worked for High Lit for a little while, and High Lit helped him get into radio as well. And my dad always idolized him because he was just truly one of the great Philadelphia legends. And my dad was also a big fan of Doug Jocko Henderson, who was in Philly and in New York, and he was a Georgie Woods fan back in the day, and Jimmy Bishop, and those guys were the hipsters when it came to the DJs.
Georgie Woods, the guy with the goods.
Yeah,
yes, indeed.
I loved it because as a young kid, I still kind of remember hearing those guys. They were still doing their thing when I was a 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old kid, and I really was like listening to these guys because I knew what I wanted to do as I got older. It was just a matter of working at it and wait until I got a little bit older to get into it a little bit.
But you always enjoyed listening to the show, like you said, Philadelphia, and then Jocko, was also in New York, and his son Doug Henderson also did Philadelphia radio for many years. So
yeah, it
was a great thing, and there's so many personalities out there. Jerry Blavitt, of course.
Oh yeah, there's one guy also I have to give a lot of props to because he's still out there doing what he likes to do, and he doesn't have some program director back there telling him how to play his music, and he's doing it the way he wants to. And I really give him a lot of props for that.
He says we play from the heart, not the record chart.
Yeah, exactly.
That's just the way it was back then. That was the type of radio that was being put out there, and the sound and personalities, and people actually went to the shows to see the radio host's name sometimes was above, Georgie Wood's name would be above the Temptations and the Supremes and the people at the Uptown Theater. We had Kimberly Roberts on one of our shows, radio show actually, and we talked about the stars of the Uptown Theater, what it was like.
Yes, I remember. I remember that book that I got from you, and I had a chance to read that. Some very, very informative stuff over the years with that.
Yes, indeed. Yes, that's a good thing. So we're going to continue talking about the classic stuff, playing this great music, and getting a little more detail. I'm going to talk a little bit more about your career in the music business and in radio, Jeff. And again, it's an honor to have you here with us here today. We got Jammin Jeff Weiman in the studio, and we're going to listen to, we played some Motown. Here's a group that's a Motown and Philly group. Tell us about the Spinners.
Well, what can you say about the Spinners? I had a chance to see them several times through the years. I've seen them with G.C. Cameron. I've seen them with Felipe Wynn when I was a kid. I saw them with Johnny Edwards. And I saw them about 8-9 years ago, right in my own neck of the woods in Morrisville, Pennsylvania.
That must be exciting.
And I'll tell you what, Henry was the only guy left holding the fort down. But the guys that he has now
Charlton, Washington.
They're all doing a great job.
Yes.
Charlton, Marvin, Jesse
Peck. Oh yeah.
They're all doing a great job at it, and I really
Ronnie Moss also.
Yeah, Ronnie Moss too.
Yes. Great group, and we're gonna jam some sounds right now from the fabulous Spinners on the R&B Showcase. Sound of Philadelphia, Tom Bell produced composition, right?
And also written by Bunny Sigler too.
All right now, keeping up that history, Jeff. Thanks, man.
Hi, I'm Jesse Peck of the legendary Spinners, and you're watching R&B Showcase Live with Tim Marshall on Philly Cam.
Our special guest in the studio is Jammin Jeff Weiman. It's an honor to have you here with us here today, Jeff. Let's take a moment. Let's reflect a little bit on the legacy of Jake Weiman. Let's go back to your mind's eye and reminisce on his legacy, what he meant to music and to radio and to keeping the sound of soul alive. Let's talk about Jake Weiman.
Thank you. He was truly an inspiration to me. Because not only was he a great DJ, he was also on the radio as well, on WRDV, and he really, really taught me a lot about the music. From a young kid up until I was an adult, because he had a chance to work with a lot of artists over the years. And I always admired him for that. And he loved what he did. Loved what he did.
Yes, I remember growing up, I remember listening to him on the radio all the time. I said, he always had that very warm personality. I kind of remember like Butterball, that warm personality, your dad. But he turned me on to a lot of great music. I know Somewhere Down the Line by Harold Melvin, the Blue Notes was a favorite. He used to play all the time down when he was playing at the club. And I used to listen to those tracks. He always had those great album tracks that he would play by the Philly artists that were just stuff that was just good music, There was so much out there.
Exactly, because that's what really got me into it as well, because, you could play like a Dramatics album, you could count on every cut being a hit on there, but, of course, Me and Mrs. Jones being the big one on there, but there's other great songs on it. So I totally enjoy, listening to those cuts besides the hits, even though the hits are important as well to what we do here. But it's great to play other things that other people don't do.
There's nothing like this great album. The thing about Philadelphia radios, you had a lot of cuts that weren't like that were big in Philadelphia, but weren't big other places. You would think because the music was just released differently now. A lot of regional hits they had, stuff that was big in Philadelphia may not have been big in New York. It may not have been big in other cities. The way music was done. It's not like everything is released out like the internet today. Back then, they kind of put a little bit out in each town and kind of got a feel for it. DC had different music, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, Philly back in the late 60s had a lot of regional hits that were very big in this area. Unfortunately, weren't big elsewhere, but here they were very big only because a lot of the big Philly DJs made it that possible. And some of those regional hits became big million sellers down the line.
Yeah, because talk about Philly. Harvey Holiday was another one we didn't mention. It was very influential in this area. You know?
I totally enjoyed listening to him years ago when he used to do his show on Power 99 and when he was on DAS for a little while and he was on 102.1 for a little while and he always had a great selection of music to play, always.
But what I liked about him, it was a show. You know, he wasn't just playing songs. He had the guest on. I remember he had Smokey on and James Brown and all of these people, you know.
Yeah, he had a great connection to a lot of those artists.
Yes, indeed. In fact, he was the one that brought the Temptations on stage at the Uptown, not the Uptown, it was the Academy of Music in 1982 for the Temptations reunion show. And that was Harvey Holiday who actually brought them on stage.
Yeah, and I
he came out, he said, they're all here.
Yeah, because I remember my father had gone to that show at the Academy of Music, as I still have his concert poster and everything from that. And he said that was a show that you just could not.
And it was 2 nights. It was a Friday night and I think we went to the Friday night show. I wish I also went to the Saturday night show because the Saturday night show they did Firefly in Richard Street. I'd love to have seen that, but I was very impressed with the guys. I thought they did a phenomenal job.
With 7 guys on stage, I mean, I've heard a recording of the reunion concert, but I've never got a chance to see any film footage. But with 7 guys, though, I'll tell you, that was.
You know, interesting. It's not. To my knowledge, there's not a lot of footage, or they're just not releasing the footage. You know, you see everything else on YouTube. You don't see anything from the reunion concert except like they'll show an album cover, and they'll have the soundtrack of the reunion show.
Or they'll have the Solid Gold TV show when they were on there.
That was good, but I would like to see that. They should put that whole concert out. That was one of their best. That was probably one of the best. It had to be the best one because you had them all up there on stage. You know.
When I went onto YouTube and they had a full thing that somebody recorded. I don't know how they got it, but and I heard David Ruffin singing. And David Ruffin sounded marvelous. I mean, he was talking about his friends, and everybody was going back and forth with one another.
He did Impossible Dream on there.
Yeah, he did.
Oh, I Wish It Would Rain was the one.
Yeah.
Wish It Would Rain. Richard Street was talking about all the members that went down the row, and each member sang a little piece of the song. But that was really, really great with the Temptations. So we can go on and on about this.
Oh yeah, you know that's my absolute favorite group in the world, and I could go on night and day about them.
Well, you know what, Jeff, you got to see the play. Ain't Too Proud on Broadway. You know, I've been telling folks about that. I think they do a great job. Those actors with that show.
What I was always wondering, how was Otis's reaction with all that when he saw that?
He loved it. In fact, I was at an event when Otis was there. Actually, when I went to see him, Otis was actually in the theater that day. And Otis and Shelley were both there for that event, and it was phenomenal, man. You know?
Well, I'm sure they had to be there because they wanted to make sure that the Temptations' name isn't being,
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So, no question about it. So anyway, but we were talking about your father, Jake Weiman. We see how much memories he instilled in us.
Yeah, well, my dad. He worked all over the place as far as like a disc jockey and everything. But when he did his radio show, he was like Harvey Holiday. He was like high lit. He was like Jerry Blavat. He really dive deep into things. He would do a whole half-hour tribute on a certain artist like the Drifters or the Five Keys or the Platters. And he would play 1 or 2 of the big hits. And he would do like the other things that they would do that you don't hear too often. And that's what really got me influenced.
Right. Because you can hear the hits anywhere. We're hearing those deeper album tracks and really getting to hear the talent. A lot of times, and even some of the artists that are out there today, they're doing that particular sound, but there are some of those artists that can really sing. But you don't get a chance to hear it because on the hits, they just have to kind of conform to what's out there. So same thing with the artists back in the day. You know, you really get to hear their talent on some of those deeper tracks and those album cuts. And we try to play a lot of stuff here on the show, on the R&B Showcase.
Yeah, it's amazing, you know, that this music, you know, that, you know, there's not too many guys left who can do that anymore, except for the guys like you and me and maybe a few others, you know, Jerry Blavitt and whatnot.
Bob Pantano's still out there, and also Fabulous Freddie C., our good friend of ours. I remember we were on a station together, on a show together. We were doing things, and Joe Tuku Kalari did our television show also. And, you know, we're all trying to keep this sound alive, keep it out there. So it's all a good thing. Jeff, let's go into some music. I know you got something you wanted to share with us here today.
Yeah, it's the number 5 track. It was the Love Committee, when they were with Gamble and Huff back in the day. Ron Tyson, it was his first group that he made after the Ethics had broke up. He formed this group called the Love Committee. And it's another great inspirational song called One Day of Peace.
R&B Showcase. We're sitting here with Jammin Jeff Weiman, a great Philadelphia DJ. Also worked with TCAM Productions, our organization, many years ago. He does a lot of the clubs and spins on the weekends. As a matter of fact, you have been at the Elks for many, many years, and you were at all the clubs all over the Philadelphia area, and of course on the radio, numerous different radio stations, playing the great R&B, Motown, and pop and soul music. A lot of the rare cuts and album tracks. You play a lot of this great Motown stuff too. Tell us a bit about how you got started and what inspired you to play this type of music. Why this sound?
Well, I chose Motown music not only for the history significant and the being a fan base of it, but it's music that I want to keep alive, because I think a lot of these younger folks that are out here today need to learn about what real music was, where it came from, how the hard work came through at Motown, what they did as far as writing and producing, and, you know, it's just the greatest.
Classic stuff, great stuff.
Classics.
No question about it, bro.
Nothing but classics. I mean, they've had more #1 hits on Motown than they have with any other groups in the world.
Think about the Funk Brothers and all the stuff they had.
Yes, that's right.
You know, so, Jeff, while we're sitting and reflecting, remember, there were so many great shows we put on back in the day with Richard Street and Damon Harris and the Temptations and G.C. Cameron and Gil Saunders and the Blue Notes and wow, and all the hosts that came down to support. I mean, we had Tommy McCarthy from OGL was with us, and we also had another gentleman from OGL, Diamond Jim Nettleton, also came to support the Damon Harris Cancer Foundation. Let's reflect on that. I mean, Element came down. We had Sumit Jatan on some of the shows. We had the mayor of Willingboro and the Delphonics, both William Hart and Wilbur Hart. And wow, so many great artists came to support the show. And let's talk a little bit about those shows and promotions that we did, because they were a lot of fun.
Well, some of my favorite events that we did, one of my favorites is we had a chance to work with Damon Harris. And that was, to me, a dream come true for me. Because I've been a Temptation fan ever since I was 3 years old. Ever since I heard the Old Directions album, that to me, I actually thought that 5 lineup guys were the actual original Temptations. But not realizing that my dad had told me, he says, Jeff, you know, there was other 3 guys prior to that besides Dennis, Damon, and Richard. There was David Ruffin and Eddie Kendricks and Paul Williams. And he bought me, and no sooner after that, he bought me the Temptations' Greatest Hits album, the first one they came out with on the Blue Album, and I was hooked ever since. What can I say?
Well, Jeff, it's interesting that you mentioned that because that was one of my favorite lineups of the Temptations. The first album that I bought, the first record that I bought was a Rolling Stone. I still have the same original 45 that I bought when I was a kid. But that was a group that we grew up with, and it's interesting that you have your parents' Temptations, that you have our Temptations, and it's really, the group has been around for such a long time. They're celebrating their 60th anniversary in music right now. They're the #1 R&B act of all time. After this group, #1 R&B act of all time, the Temptations.
It's amazing the influence that they've had on many groups like New Edition, New Kids on the Block, even today's artists, but I mean, I don't see too many groups today, but I'm talking like a lot of the groups from the 80s and 90s, they were all influenced by the Temptations in some way, shape, or form.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, we had a couple people on the show and they were talking about 98 Degrees. We talked to them, Jeff Timmons of that group. And we talked about the influence of the Temptations on all those different artists over the years. If you took the Temptations, the Jackson 5, and put them together, you'd have New Edition. That Candy Girl sound, the Michael Jackson, the Jackson 5 sound. But they look like the Temptations up there with their steps, the choreography, and their uniforms and things. So,
I mean, there was other groups too besides the Temps that were influenced by all these groups of the 80s and 90s, and then some. You had the Dramatics, you had Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, the Shy Lights, the Dells. I mean, the Four Tops. I mean, those were legends. And I'm glad that a lot of these groups that came out in the 80s and 90s had that to look back on.
Well, you can thank Snoop Dogg for that, Dog World.
Oh, yeah.
Snoop was too much. But anyway, those are, he recognized the Dramatics, had the Dramatics on his album, and Hall & Oates had David Ruffin and Eddie Kendricks on theirs. They kind of reached back to their heroes because they were the Temptones, growing up in the 60s. And Hall & Oates were the Temptones. A lot of people don't remember them.
Yeah, I have some of the original 45s that my dad picked up way back in the late 60s when they first came out. None of them were hits, but he managed to get those original 45s.
They were on the Arctic label, was it?
Yes.
Jimmy Bishop's label, wasn't it?
Yes, that's exactly what it was. Jimmy Bishop owned that label. He had Barbara Mason on there, the Ambassadors, and a bunch of other groups.
Yes, indeed, yeah. You're really going back, Jeff. You're blowing my mind, brother.
Hey, Uptown Theater days, what can I say?
And then they call it the Chitlin Circuit, the Uptown Theater, the Apollo Theater, Howard Theater, the Regal Theater. I mean, all that was part of that circuit, and then that's where those artists, had a chance to tour. And that was for the Temptations. That's before they even crossed over, when the Mellow Mood album came out, they actually crossed over to bigger markets. But they actually, now I'm not sure if the movie was correct on this, but they said as soon as they got to the Copa, that's when things really started to pick up for them. I mean, they just weren't the greatest R&B group. They became the biggest group of all time. Yes, and then Supremes had, and the Beatles, of course, were out at the time, but the Supremes were actually had that #1 spot in Motown. Then the Temps came. Then they had TCB specials, and you had Dennis Edwards as part of the lineup then with the group. So a lot changed, but they just kept on going. So much history behind that, and so Damon Harris. We had the Damon Harris Cancer Foundation, and Damon came down, of course. The Delphonics, William Hart, and the Delphonics came and performed, and that was another great event. Miss Marilyn Marshall,
yes,
jazz recording artist,
most definitely.
Yeah, that was great.
I was really impressed when I heard Damon first sing again, the first time after not hearing him for so many years, doing "Love Woke Me Up This Morning" at that show. I still have it on the a little videotape I made years ago.
Jeff, I got to get a copy of that tape, brother. There's no copies of that tape available. This is a piece of history. To have Damon Harris and Richard Street come down to these events, and these were special events. They weren't just them performing with a group or anything like that. They were special events, and these guys came down and performed. They did some charitable work for us, and also with the Linda Creed Breast Cancer Foundation some years ago. And Richard Street came down. Element who was on the Making the Band show, the original Making the Band, not the P. Diddy one before that, the real one.
Yeah, because I believe
Grace Lee, can't forget about Grace.
I believe Richard Street was a fan of the Philadelphia sound. He was a big fan of like the Stylistics and the Spinners and all them groups like that. Because I remember him talking at the event about that, and he was just really in awe of all that stuff. besides the Motown stuff and everything.
Yeah, Richard and Miss Marilyn Marshall sang, one of the stylistic songs at that event. You make me feel brand new.
Yes.
Yeah, totally. They just Richard got up, started singing, and Marilyn was in. It was great. It was just a memorable event. Of course, Element performed a tribute to the Temptations, a cappella version of Papa Was a Rolling Stone, which was very good. And then
Richard got up and performed again.
yes, he did. And tell us about the song he sang.
Oh my goodness! This is something I have to mention. During that same event with Richard Street, everybody, I accidentally, believe it or not, put on "Hey Girl, I Like Your Style." I meant to put on something fast, but that song came on. He came up to me. He says, "I want to sing that song." So he grabbed the mic from me, and he started singing the song. And he sounded exactly like he did on the record. And everybody and their mother and brother was trying to get their cameras up and running. Everybody's cameras were down and charging and dead.
We got the whole entire event, all the people talking and the interviews and everything. And Bobby J came down from New York City.
Yeah, I
My
remember
cousin.
that, yes.
And Weldon McDougal was there, and all of these people came to support this event. But it was funny, it was interesting because everybody's camera died at the same time.
But when he did that "Hey Girl, I Like Your Style," right over the microphone with the original cut, I was just simply in awe because I couldn't believe how great his voice still sounded the same as it did on that record.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was just really amazing.
It sounded just like the record.
It's just like his voice never changed.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That was that was 90 something. When was that? Early 2000 maybe.
That was early 2000 something.
2001 or 2000. Wasn't that long? It wasn't. It was. I guess close to 20 years ago, right?
Yeah, at least.
And unfortunately, we lost Richard Street and Damon Harris. The voices on Papa Was a Rolling Stone, and they died a week apart of each other.
Yeah, they were the Grammy-winning Temptations too.
That was 2013 that we lost both of those great artists, and those are just memories that we'll always cherish those things. And both of them were inducted that same year into the Rhythm and Blues Music Hall of Fame as well. So that was a great thing. But they didn't get a chance to get there.
Too.
They deserved it though.
I'm still to this day I can never understand why they weren't inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
As far as getting an award, along with the five prime, or the six that were on this. There was five guys on the stage, but six got into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
I just honestly think Damon Harris and Richard should have been up there with them.
I agree with that. But I'm glad we have the other Vocal Group Hall of Fame and the R&B Hall of Fame also honored them. So that was a great thing. So,
Yeah.
And we honored them. So
Hey, that's the best part about it.
that was a lot of fun.